So today I wanted to chat about homeschool planning and essentially what I've learned and from trying a plan where it was literally everything was color coded and there was sheets and folders and everything labeled to where I am now and how I am nowhere near that. And also the mistakes and the mindset mistakes essentially that I see many homeschoolers make, and it does create some real pitfalls in day-to-day homeschooling simply because you haven't really taken into account a few critical areas when you're sitting down and planning your homeschooling. Hello, if you don't know me, my name is Sinead. I am a stay-at-home mum to 5 children here in Australia, and I also have a blog called thesimplemama.com where I talk about all things homeschooling, motherhood and child training. And here on YouTube I really do try and get a video up once a week on the same homeschooling, motherhood, child training and sort of how to manage all three. And I do have a freebie in today's video which you can access to help you along in your homeschool planning. So I will have that linked below if you want to read the blog posts that I have. I have several blog posts on burnout, planning, creating a learning lifestyle, and there's all free printables to go along with those. So they're all down below if that's all you wanted to do. Otherwise, sit and we're going to stay and talk about homeschool planning. My planning style has definitely evolved, and it's evolved because I've learned what is sustainable and essentially what is effective throughout the year. And I have found that sitting down and making a homeschool plan it's something that we all do because it's something that we feel we have to do. It's something that we feel we have to do, and it is nice to do at the start of homeschooling. It makes you feel like you know where to start. It makes you feel like you're moving along and you're ticking boxes, and it makes you feel like you're in control. However, I find that it's usually done the wrong way, and if not done the wrong way entirely, it's just done with the wrong considerations in mind, and it's just done in ways where people just aren't considering their lifestyle, where they're at in their homeschooling journey. They're just getting the new and shiny curriculum, feeling really excited about a new year, sitting down and making a plan either as loose or as detailed as they feel is necessary, and then trying their best for the rest of the year to get it done. And for a lot of us, it does not work. So, before you sit and start your homeschool planning process, there are a few questions you need to ask yourself. First one is, what is your current lifestyle? People tend to plan their homeschooling into this sort of black hole where they live a certain way now, whether they are new to homeschooling, whether they're currently in school holidays, or whether they're trying a new method of homeschooling this year. They have a current way of living, and that current way of living or your lifestyle is made up of habits and comforts and necessary things to do. And a lot of people sort of ignore all that, and they buy the homeschool curriculum and they just make this black hole homeschool plan where they're not considering anything else that is going on in the day and that has to go on in their day, things that may change, things that may move out of their control, and instead they just create a plan. And it just has to slot into their lifestyle no matter what. And this is one of the main hiccups in homeschool planning. And I have found that so many homeschoolers, they're watching the YouTube videos or they're doing these detailed plans with great intentions, but they just haven't assessed some pretty crucial questions. So one, understand your lifestyle. Yes, your lifestyle is going to have to change when you integrate homeschooling into it. That's normal and necessary and completely legitimate. But you're still a mother and a wife, and you still have other responsibilities. You still have a home to run and meals to cook. You may have other things that you're doing outside of the home to an extent, and you cannot just force yourself to execute a plan that you created essentially just sitting down for a few hours or a few days, and make yourself do that all year round and expect to be able to keep it up, to not burn out, and to feel free in that plan. If you're doing this, then the first thing you need to do is assess your lifestyle. There are questions that you can ask yourself, such as, when do I have the most time in the day? But also, when do I feel the best in the day? Homeschooling is very draining. You have to take it on when you're feeling good. For me, I have a lot of time now in the afternoon. I could essentially homeschool my older boys now, but to be honest, by the time I get to this time of day, I'm tired. Going all day, tending to all my children's needs, my household's needs, and I cannot pick up 9 to 10 hours into the day and sit down and be as effective and consistent as I can be if I'm fresh in the morning. So you do have to obviously create some lifestyle changes that if my mornings were pretty hectic before I started homeschooling, you do want to try and slot homeschooling in there if that's when you're feeling good and fresh and able to take on that workload, that mental strain of educating children. But if that's not you, and if you feel fantastic in the afternoon, then don't do it in the morning so much. Really assess what works for you. Is it better for you to do a homeschool on the weekend when you can have a husband or someone watch little ones for a little while, if that's an agreement you can come to? Is there a time in your day or a time in your season of life now where you can change up your homeschooling to suit you and not just create a plan that you think everyone else is doing, that you think is normal, that you think that you should do because that's what the curriculum says or that's what you feel you should? It's not going to work. You must assess your lifestyle first. Make small changes to incorporate homeschooling. You cannot make huge, gigantic changes and expect them to be long-lasting and expect not to burn out from it. You will find that as your children age and as you do this for longer and longer, you will look back on your life 5 years from now. Changes have happened, big changes have occurred. They happen naturally, they happen slowly, and they happen with a slow change in seasons in life. So you have to account for that. So if you're a new homeschooler, or if you're a homeschooler where you've made plans in the past and they're just not working and you feel really overwhelmed by them, then assess your lifestyle. The second question you want to ask before you sit down and even think about planning is, what is your current homeschool role? You as a mother or the parent who is homeschooling, you have a role which changes as children age and move on through their homeschooling. A mother who is homeschooling a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old has a much different role than a mother who is homeschooling a 16 and a 17-year-old. And your planning is going to greatly be reflected in that. When you're teaching young children, you need to completely ditch the long-term plans. You need to, pretty much any child in the age of primary school, you want to make sure that you're in a mode when you're around them, that you are delivering information, you're assessing how they're learning, you're learning how they learn, you're taking records of knowledge gaps, of strengths, of weaknesses, of where you need to fill, of where you need to be. Your role is really hands-on. And to be consistent, I find that I need to do a lot less per day, which is why I have chosen to minimalist homeschool during this season in my life. And so you need to understand your role. If you don't understand what your role and how it's going to incorporate in your day-to-day homeschooling, you cannot sit down and make a plan that is going to really work for you and your family. So to be able to understand your role right now, one, how old are your children? If they're at the age where they are still not competent readers, not able to self-teach, which if you don't know what that is, I have a video which I will hopefully chuck up here somewhere that you can watch on what that is. But if you have children who are not at that stage yet, then your children are still at the stage where you are analyzing and delivering information to them very much one-on-one, or at least in a very small group. You are very hands-on, and you should be pretty much the whole time they're schooling, you should be listening to them read, you should be correcting everything that is wrong, you should be walking around the school table, you should be hovering over them, And it may seem a little bit over the top, but if you don't, then you are going to create huge knowledge gaps that you don't realize you've made. And while you don't have to be like a hawk every second, you must be present. You must at least check their work. You have to at least be on top of, and not so much to be going, oh, are we reaching a goal? Checking that their writing is well done, checking that their sums haven't been missed or they're not getting something wrong, checking that their vocabulary is growing, checking that they're able to keep up with life skills as you should be introducing them, and just checking that they're feeling confident in their school abilities. That's really important. If your young child starts to lose confidence and the school starts to feel like a drag for them, all your learning and all their learning is going to slow down. Your job and your role as a homeschooler, before you have those self-learners and competent readers, which is the majority of primary school, if not all, your job is very hands-on. And so when you're planning your homeschool, you need to be able to plan time for this. You need to be able to also have assessed your lifestyle to know when this is going to happen, when this is best for you. You also need to be able to do this consistently. Consistency is key when teaching children this age. So when you're planning, it's why I have scaled back into a minimalist homeschooler, because I realized in the first year or two of my homeschooling, I was not consistent and my children's learning suffered considerably. So it was better for me to scale back, remain consistent in mastering the key concepts to get my children to be self-learners. And to plan my homeschooling that way takes more time in the assessment area than it does in the planning area. So that is my current role. And if that's your current role, that is going to affect your planning. Talk about planning in the high school role. When you are planning in the high school role, that does mean that you can incorporate a lot more long-term goals. The short-term goals should really be falling to your children. By then, if you have established self-learners, or if you're on the way to establishing good self-learners by then, which also includes time management and being able to self-assess, being able to ask for help, being able to listen to instruction. If you're working on these skills in your children, then the short-term goals are really going to fall to them. You become more of a helper, more of an aid, more of a time management overseer, and more of an encouragement to your children than you do this one-on-one lesson delivery style. So your planning can be much more open-ended, much more long-term. You can sort of create more of these goals to reach and try and create some time zones for your children to hit certain subjects so that you can help them. By the time they get to high school, a lot of them have extra credits to fill in or extra electives, and they have the higher workload. So your role becomes more keeping them accountable, helping them when they need it. And so your planning is going to be a lot easier because you're going to be able to reflect that in long-term goals, and your children should be able to sort of monitor their own short-term goals with your help. So the next thing is to understand and experiment with your routine and your homeschool lifestyle, and even how you like to plan and what makes you feel on top of things, because that's a big deal. You may try and plan how I do and you may hate it, and that's one of those things where that's the learning process. Adapt and create what is sustainable for you. Create what makes you feel comfortable. This is going to take time. You are not going to sit down and plan the perfect plan for you the first time. It's going to take several years. And more importantly, it takes your children aging and growing into the homeschool process for you to be able to understand how they learn, for them to be able to understand how they themselves learn, what they enjoy, subjects they like, subjects they dislike, to understand you and how you teach. And all of these things becomes incorporated into your day-to-day life, because it comes incorporated into how much they can do before they get tired. It comes into the amount of life skills that you're doing and in your learning lifestyle, which you should be incorporating into your homeschooling. That also will affect how your children learn and how your children just think and live day to day. This all affects your homeschooling. So as you grow into your homeschool lifestyle, and as your children grow into it, and as you learn yourself and learn your planning, Your plans will get more and more adaptable to you and to your family, as they should. That's the whole point. And so allow space, even if it means keeping a note in your planner, somewhere to go, how am I feeling? Like, even if you just every 3 months ahead, like write yourself a little thing going, how is this actually going? Am I feeling overwhelmed, or am I feeling good right now? Am I feeling like I'm on top of things, or do I feel like I am letting things slipping through the gaps? I'm not being consistent. I don't feel effective. Something has to change. And if you're getting to that point, then allow yourself to think of what you might want, think of what you might need, do some research, or just take a break and come back. Allowing yourself to grow and to become your own version of sustainable and effective is a key aspect in planning. There is nothing worse and there is nothing less helpful than making a plan that doesn't work and sticking to it. The pressure to plan this in-depth homeschool year, which is this, for me, I don't do. But if you are doing this, especially with young children, then it's a very much an adult system in a child's world, and it's not going to work. Children, even when we plan for their growth and for their growth in knowledge, for their growth physically, we almost never plan a whole year. We see leaps and bounds, and we see back steps in children's growth from month to month, from 6 months, from 3 months, especially at a young age. And yet we still sit down and plan an entire year of homeschooling. And for me, it just doesn't work. So we've talked about assessing your lifestyle and about knowing your current role in your homeschooling. Now I want to talk about planning. And planning really is just easy. Because you're going to create long-term mindsets. These long-term mindsets are for you. You don't have to tell your children of them. I suggest once you have come up with your long-term mindsets, you keep them somewhere where you're going to see them often, because they create refreshers in your mind to move on, to assess your children, to be able to adapt new teaching styles, or adapt something, or just bring in something new to your homeschooling, because in your mind, you know that's going to help your children somewhere along the lines of getting to those long-term mindsets. Now, the first long-term mindset I have is creating competent learners, creating a hopefully intelligent child who can read well, who can analyze information, who can think critically, who is able to self-teach and be self-taught. So by the time they get to high school, I will introduce new subjects to them, and by then my planning in my homeschool for that child is going to change dramatically. Like I said, I'm going to be able to sort of think more long term. I'm going to be able to just keep them accountable, to be a help when they need it. But it's no more of this hovering one-on-one assessment. It is going to be, hopefully, it's going to be them, rolling on, and them learning, reading, and hopefully enjoying most of their school. And I am there as an encouragement, as help, and as just a completely different role. So my long-term mindset is, yes, create a competent learner, create a critical thinker. That's a very big term to be able to just keep in your planner for what could be 5 years, and know that you're on the way to reaching it. So yeah, you want to break that up into, I like to call it learning zones. And I like to make short-term goals, which I will sort of make in a list for each year, or even each 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 2 weeks. I like to create lifestyle changes so that my children can learn the thinking skills and the life skills that are incorporated into being a critical thinker and a self-learner and a confident reader and all those things. Obviously, the first ones you want to master are reading, writing, grammar, critical thinking, which is a lot of your mathematics, and you want to introduce them to extracurricular read alouds. You want to introduce them to life skills. Life skills is huge in a young child's life. If you're not incorporating like huge chunks of life skills, then your children's thinking ability, being able to follow instructions, take instructions, give instructions to others, being able to care for themselves, time manage, being able to help themselves, being able to be self-reliant, being able to be reliable, being able to do all those things which you want essentially in a person and in a self-learner is critical. You are not going to be able to build many of those skills in formal schooling alone. So life skills is really critical in planning your homeschool. And if you download my printable planner, which is just very, very simple, you are going to see a column for life skills in both your long-term mindset and in your short-term plans. And the reason for this is I think that they should be fully incorporated into your homeschooling. I am not going to talk hugely about that today. I'm going to make another video all on how I incorporate life skills into which age groups, which abilities, and how I do it day to day without feeling overwhelmed. That's another video, but you are going to see it there in your homeschool planner. So if you see it there, you can see how I have filled mine in. I have an example one that you can look at. Otherwise, just leave it be until next week when I hopefully put up the next video, and you'll be able to fill in all that side of your planner. Now, so basic long-term goals. You can look at the example planner that I have that you'll be able to download and just read through. It's a real planner of my eldest son. So I was going to make a fake one, but I just thought, no, I'll make a real one. And so that is exactly what he is learning right now. You can see exactly how I structure it and exactly how I keep myself accountable. And that is my plan. So now I want to talk about short-term goals because long-term mindsets are hard to maintain, because my long-term mindsets, and I think long-term mindsets, if you're doing them for a child's life, you cannot put timestamps on them. You cannot say, I want my child to be at this place, which is where I know they should be in order to reach the goal that I want them to reach, which mine is being a competent, reliable self-learner. And if you're dealing with a 5-year-old, that's really hard to be able to maintain when days get busy. Like, it's very unrealistic. And so you want to keep those long-term mindsets where you can see them, because it's going to keep you on track, especially for child assessment. But your real planning and your real ability and effectiveness is in those really teeny tiny short-term goals. Especially these goals are so short-term when your children are very young, like 5, 6, if you're starting them with school, that like 2 to 6 weeks. 6 weeks is maximum. A 5-year-old is, if you're making goals for 3 months, 6 months, just ditch it. It's too long. 2 to 6 weeks should be your sweet spot for different things. And that's a short-term goal. And you're not going to have hundreds of these going on. You're going to have 2 to 3 per child per 2 to 6 week mark. And it all comes down to assessment of your child. Ultimate homeschool planning is relevant planning. And relevant planning is being an effective planner. And relevancy allows you as the mentor and as the teacher to stay on track. But more importantly, as your children grow and as you grow into your own developing how you teach, and also developing what to teach and when, and how to read your children, how to read when they're ready, when they're not ready, how to boost their confidence. All of this comes with time. And as you do this, you should be using your homeschool planner to record. These are your best friend, not for filling in a future year's worth of work, but for recording how your children are going. Keep small notes. You can see mine is filled with so many sticky notes that I'm sticking in and moving around, because I find that the easiest way to move goals or to move little notes that I've left for myself. Get a planner, but understand that most people like to use planners to plan ahead. I like to use mine to look back and to assess and to keep myself and my children accountable. So, for example, I say, don't prompt James too much for his math questions. This is a way for me to remember. I'm sitting at the table. I've written this yesterday. So today when I'm sitting down, I'm like, okay, don't prompt him. I don't know. For me, these things, and then I will just turn the page to 2 weeks in the future, and I will actually write, how is James going on his math questions? And it's a way for me to constantly be on top of every sliding and moving, what would you call them? I suppose like knowledge bridges. I find that children can just leap from one to the other. And you need to be on top of that, because sometimes they're not going to. Sometimes you're going to miss an area. Sometimes you're going to not work on an area well enough for that particular child. Sometimes you're going to forget to teach something altogether, especially if you're like me and you have 3 children who are all in rapid succession, and you've taught one reading and it's time to start the next one, but you may completely forget something. Like, that happens. And being able to just constantly take notes, sit and watch them and assess them and how they're learning is going to make your planning really relevant. Create those short-term goals, create smaller terms of schooling if you have to, and be really relevant, because that is what's going to be consistent and effective in your homeschooling. So another thing is how to stay on track with short-term goals. It can seem really overwhelming if you were like, well, I have to write that down every day, and I might get a new point every day, and then I might forget to write it ahead, and then I might just breeze past it, and the next thing you know, it's been 6 months and I wrote that I should have done that and it never got done. So in the planner that you can print off, there is the long-term mindsets page and the long-term life skills page. There is also a page that you can print or that you can just upload to your phone and fill in. That is your 10 points that you can use for however short term or long term you want to go. So I usually go from 2 to 6 to 8 weeks for my older children. For my 5-year-old, it's mostly 2 weeks. You can completely alter the times that you want to use, but that way you can keep that on hand and go, okay, for the next 8 weeks, I'm working on these 10 points. 10 points is manageable, it's doable, it doesn't feel overwhelming. You don't have to feel like you have to add anything extra to your homeschooling. If anything, you're probably going to be taking away so that your children can focus on mastering those few concepts or points or even life skills in order to move on to where you think is going to help them on the next stage. So you can use that. For me, I've just gotten in the habit of keeping those points on my own, and I have found that since I've started this way of planning, my children have grown exponentially in their knowledge base, in their confidence. Feeling overwhelmed with that, use the 10-point list. Otherwise, narrow it down to 3 points, 5 points, 2 points in 2 weeks. And another skill in itself is learning how to analyze what your children need and what standards you should uphold in your schooling. When I first started homeschooling, I did not really care that they weren't writing properly, that some of the letters weren't formed properly. I didn't really care that they weren't writing their numbers in their maths books properly. I didn't really care that much, but it doesn't really work not to care. You think that you're letting them be children and you think that you're letting them just relax. All that happens though is that as they age, they become sloppy and lazy, and then when it comes time to even being able to read what they write, you can't. And you realize that you have to completely rethink all of that. So I have learned that if I see a child who's getting something mixed up, like a B and a D, and they're like, just stop now, let's just write out this, let's just do different words with B's and D's. I don't want you getting stuck on that anymore, you've been doing that long enough. If I see a child that is having trouble forming a certain number, I will say, hey, shut the book for today, let's write that number, let's do some activities. It's learning that you're hovering and that you're a constant assessment of your children is far more fruitful than just getting the job done, than just, oh, we haven't got time to master that right now, we've got to hit the plan. I have a goal, we should be halfway through our maths books by the middle of the year. You just keep on steamrolling through those 4 pages a day. I want to feel confident in my ability as a homeschooler. I want to hit that goal that I set for myself 6 months ago, so let's just steamroll ahead. And you're sitting there and you're ticking the boxes in your homeschool plan, and that is not fruitful. You need to be assessing and hovering and constantly, gently encouraging and pulling your children aside and saying, hey, just don't even have to tell them what's wrong. Just say, hey, we're not going to do that today. If you've seen that there's something lacking, if you're seeing that, oh, they should have mastered that months ago, I must have missed that, then take the time to pause and master it. It is going to get you so much further, which is why I prefer greatly the long-term mindsets, which are for me. They're my goals for my children that I have for 5 years' time. For my 10-year-old, it's for 2 years' time, and he is rapidly progressing towards that goal. I can see it happening. So to recap, how I plan my minimalist homeschooling, and you can download my free, very simple minimalist homeschool planner, which I will link in the blog post down below. But to recap, you want to, 1, know your role. Know and assess your role in where you are now. You cannot sit down and plan any homeschooling if you're not understanding of what your role is. And I understand that some people are going to have obviously teenagers and they're going to have young children. So you're going to plan for each one completely differently. And you're going to plan your lifestyle, and you're going to plan their day and their lifestyle and their life skills all around what your role is and what they need. And your homeschooling, 2, plan your homeschooling to your current lifestyle. Do not plan your homeschooling into a black hole. You cannot just summon up 4 hours in the day and say, we're going to get it done, and think that you're not going to feel overwhelmed, and think that you're not going to fall behind in the other things that you do every day before you homeschool or before you take on this style of homeschooling. You must assess your current lifestyle. Make healthy changes. Healthy, sustainable changes are always small. You can never make huge changes. It's like exercising or starting a new diet. It's usually you sort of know that in order to really take this on, you have to start slow. You're not going to go and start squatting 100 kilos on day 1. You're going to squat body weight, and you're going to keep on going. And it's exactly the same with homeschooling. Sustainable changes are small changes. Let yourself grow into them. 3 fingers. Create long-term mindsets and short-term goals. The long-term mindsets are going to keep you accountable. They're going to keep you on track. They're going to keep you knowing why you're doing this day to day when times get tough. Again, it's really important also to know your why. Write that down. Write your long-term mindsets. Close your eyes and think, where do you want your children to be in 5 years for each individual one? Like, these long-term mindsets, they're big. And don't put timestamps on them. If you put a timestamp on a long-term mindset, you're only hindering your own self, and then you're going to put pressure on your child. You're going to feel overwhelmed. You're going to create a plan that doesn't work for you to try and reach it, and then it's just lost all its value. 4, short-term goals. Short-term goals are crucial. Remember your role. Remember that even no matter how old your child is, if they need a more active role from you, then fill that role. You need to be assessing them all the time. Homeschooling is very full on mentally, and you need to be able to do that effectively and sustainably. So if that means you're scaling back what you're teaching and how long you're doing it each day, then you also need to plan for that. Know and make sure that you're assessing your lifestyle and how much time you can mentally sustain, because that's a big deal. There's no point in steamrolling through your homeschooling if you're not going to be able to be as effective and make yourself effective and make your learning effective. 5 is experiment with what works for you. Like I said, there are so many other options too that you can research here on YouTube, but you can research online. There is loop scheduling, there is 4 days a week, there is 6-week terms, there are homeschooling on weekends, there are homeschooling and switching out kids for each week if you've got some really full-on learning to do. There are so many options out there. You can cater something completely to you, and make sure that you get free with experimenting with that. Don't look at anybody else is doing. Don't look at anybody else and think that they're doing it better than you. Everyone has their struggles. Everyone has a hard time. Everyone has their off days. Everyone is homeschooling in chaos and a dirty house sometimes. Everyone feels overwhelmed. It takes you time to experiment and learn what suits you, and you have to give yourself up to that. It can feel frustrating at first when you're just beginning that journey, because you know that you're going to make mistakes. I'm that kind of person where I feel frustrated when I know I have to learn something new, but you got to do it. So I suggest, if you're really struggling with it, write it down. Keep on writing yourself little notes every 6 weeks in your planner, and make yourself answer a few questions. See how you're feeling, see what you could change, and like I said, slow, steady changes are what is going to keep you on track. So that's it. Whew. So that's planning. My children think I'm nuts. They think I just sit here and talk to myself incessantly. I mean, maybe they're right, I don't know. Anyway, so my next video is going to be incorporating life skills. I think incorporating life skills is just so crucial to any homeschooler, whether you're minimalist or not. Young children, older children have a vast range of life skills that they need to be taking on and learning. And if you don't, you are going to see huge knowledge gaps, and you're going to be wondering why they're not reading very well, they're not taking instructions very well, they're not thinking really well. I can't rely on them, they're 15, what is going on? It's life skills. You've forgotten life skills. So, interested in learning how I teach day-to-day life skills, I will do a day in the life. I think this next one will be sort of a bit of a sit down and a day in the life. If you are interested as well in how I do it day to day, then you can head over to my Instagram, which is the same name. It's @thesimplemama. And you can follow along, and I'm going to be a lot more involved in my Instagram, and I will do daily little things on what I'm doing, like real, each day, to teach my children life skills and how I do it without feeling overwhelmed and making these horrible long lists. It's just about sticking to the 10 points that I have in my planner and working through it and watching my children grow. So that's my next video, and if you're interested, head over to my Instagram and follow me there, and you can see a lot more day-to-day life as well. And for now, that's it. I'm going to go. I have lasagna sauce simmering on my stove and pasta to roll out, so that's what I'm going to go and do. And subscribe if you want to see more. I do a video every week on motherhood, child training, homeschooling. Any questions, leave them in the comments below. And I'm about to start a new child training series, which is going to take you through exactly how I suppose, train my children to be reliable, obedient, respectful, to listen. And it's how I have the groundwork to be able to homeschool like I do and have my life like I do. So if you're interested in that, you can go to my blog and you can subscribe to the email series. The email series is going to have each post, and it's also going to have all the freebies that go along with that child training series. I will also do a child training series here on YouTube. So if you're interested, please like this video, please subscribe, and until next time, bye.